Okay, Pathfinders, thank you for taking the time out to spend some time with us as we study about flowers. Today we are going to look into the Pathfinder Honour for Flowers, which is a skill level 2. There is also an advanced honour, which is a skill level 3, but you need to do this as a foundation. With me is my wife, Sandhya.
Hi.
Okay, so the requirements. Why do we look, or why do we need flowers?
Okay. Hi, Pathfinders. So today it's very exciting to come again to present to you the honor on flowers. So you all have graduated from your adventures. So you might remember the Flowers Award that you've done. So from that, if you can recall, what are some of the key main uses of a flower? If you can remember them, can you type in the chat box there, please? Some of the key uses of a flower. Right, while you're writing and typing up that, we just discovered. So we know that flower was created on the 3rd day of the creation. So this world, if you look at, there's lots and lots of colorful flowers. And God has created this universe so beautifully with the different colors and different fragments of these flowers. So there's a lot of things to learn about flowers. But in today's portion, we will cover only some parts of that. Now, let me just go through it. Natalie, have they mentioned any uses?
Yeah, we've got somebody said to make perfume, to make dye for clothes. They produce fruit eventually, and then for decoration.
Very good. Very good.
Now, why do we give flowers when we go to the hospital? Can anybody tell us why we give flowers when we go to visit somebody, when we go to the hospital? If you can type it in the chat, and Natalie will read them out when we can. Well, while we're doing that, I am going to go through the requirements. The requirements for this honor, okay, you need to draw or photograph 35 kinds of wildflowers and identify them correctly. You need to draw and properly label and point out the actual parts of a flower, such as pistil, stamen, petal, and sepal. You need to name 6 flower families and their distinguishing characteristics, and name at least 2 flowers in each family. You need to describe the life cycle or life story of a particular flower, including the part played by insects or wind in pollination. Name at least 2 plants that are poisonous to touch, and state which, or if any, are found in your locality. Do 3 of the following. Arrange, draw, or photograph a series of at least 6 flowers showing in order of the colors of the rainbow, such as red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. Submit fresh, pressed, or dried flowers which have 5 petals, 4 petals, 3 petals, and no petals. Distinguish and name 2 out of 5 wild or cultivated flowers by their smell or odor while being blindfolded. That'll be interesting. D, list the flowers that you have observed being visited for food by the following: birds, honeybees, bumblebees, butterflies, and moths. Watch a flower for at least 10 minutes in the sunshine and at least 10 minutes after dusk and report on the insect visitors. State the number and kinds of visitors and name of the flower. Okay, Sandhya.
Right, Natalie, have they mentioned about the reason why?
Yes, we've got some answers here. Somebody said because it cheers them up. That's why they take flowers to hospital. It brightens up the patient's day, gives them some hope. It smells nice. It can make people feel happy or better. It says some are medicinal and can brighten up the hospital room. Yeah, I think that's all the answers there.
Very good, well done. So basically, it triggers the happy brain chemicals. So that is the basic idea why we give flowers to somebody when they're sick, or even when we're gifting a flower to somebody on a happy birthday or wishing them. So these are the idea to trigger your happy brain cells. So there are different cells like oxytocin. That is actually triggering a bonding hormone. It makes the feeling of love, romance, trust, and affection. So it also might release your dopamine. That's that dopamine relation actually produces a rewarding feeling. It might also help in releasing serotonin, which is happy hormone, which actually reduces your depression and things like that. So those are reasons, some of the reasons why you give flowers to people as gifts, okay? Now, we're going into our second requirement. You might be wondering, what's the first requirement? We're going to leave that for a later time, towards the end of the presentation. But we're going to start with the requirement number 2, in which we have to draw and label the parts of a flower, okay? So on the slide, you can see a flower there. So if you look at that, the flower parts that we need to identify today are mainly the 4 parts. So first one is the sepal. So that is the green color that you can see, the end, which actually holds the bud or the flower. So it's the green color that you see there is the sepal. So there, the main function is to hold the bud or the flower, okay? The next part is the petal. That is the colorful, the pink color that is shown in the diagram. So the flowers that you see, the different colors, there the different colors are the petals. So the pink color that you see there is the petal, okay? Now the third part that you need to identify is stamen. And the fourth one is pistil. So the stamen is actually comprising of 2 main parts. This is also called as the male reproductive part of a flower. And the pistil is called as a female reproductive part of a flower. So when you look at there, the stamen, it's labeled there. So the anther is one part of stamen, and that's the top part which actually holds up the pollens, okay? And then the tubular filamental part that holds the anther is called as the filament. The anther and filament together makes the stamen. And the stamen is the male reproductive part of a flower, okay? So now we are going to the other side of the label there. If you look at it, it's pistil. So pistil is basically comprising of the 3 parts, the stigma, style, and ovary. So stigma is the top sticky part of the pistil. So if you look at there, the topmost part, which is sticky, that part is the stigma. And then you have the tubular part that comes down the stigma, that is the style. And that is down below, then it goes down to the ovary. And it's the ovary that holds the ovule. So the stigma, style, and the ovary together forms the pistil, okay? And the ovary holds the ovules, right? So let's recap the 4 main parts of a flower. So what are the main 4 parts? Sepal, that's the green color that you see in the diagram there. The pink color that you see there is the petal. And then you have the male reproductive part and the female reproductive part. The male reproductive part is the stamen, which comprises of anther and filament. The female reproductive part is pistil, which comprises of stigma, style, and ovary. The ovary holds the ovules. So I hope that clears the different parts of a flower.
Just to say that Abraham and Sandy have very kindly sent through a quiz sheet, which will be loaded up on the website. I've just loaded it up now, actually. So you've got a quiz sheet and you have the answer sheet there. So obviously have a go at the quiz sheet first and see if you can remember the parts of the flower, and then you can attach that to your worksheet to go in your club folder for marking. And then obviously you can check it with the answer sheet afterwards. Thank you very much.
In continuation with that, if you look at the stem, the green part of the stem, the lower part, that's also called the peduncle. And the part where the ovary meets the stem is called the receptacle. So that might come in handy when you are filling out that quiz part of it. Now, before we go into the next part of the flower honor, we are going to come across some terms. So one of the terms that you're going to routinely come across will be monocots and dicots. Monocot is a plant which has 1 cotyledon, and dicot is a plant which has 2 cotyledons. 1 cotyledon means 1 embryonic leaf. Dicot will be 2 embryonic leaves. Parallel leaf veins, other leaf veins, vascular. We will not be going into the vascular part of it, but mostly you'll come across a lot of the terms will be monocot and dicot. So keep that in mind when we go. So one of the requirements is for us to identify 6 flower families. Okay, there are over 400 flower families and thousands and thousands of species of families. For the sake of today's honor, we are going to look at 6 families. These 6 families can be broadly divided into the orchids, lily, cactus, rose, aster, and buttercup. We will look at each family a little bit in detail, and we'll look at 2 examples from each family. Now, the orchid family, or as is technically called, the Orchidaceae, okay, is one of the largest flowering families. It has over 25,000 species. They are mainly monocotyledons, and which means they have 1 cotyledon and 1 embryonic leaf. The orchids have simple leaves with parallel veins, and their shape is highly variable between the species. One of the most famous orchids that I like is vanilla. Vanilla is an orchid, and it is the bean of the vanilla that gives us the lovely smell that we use in cakes, ice creams, and other things. Another orchid here is the lady slipper orchid, which is unique. Now, another unique thing among Orchidaceae is they consist of 3 petals and 3 sepals. Now, the unique thing about these petals and sepals is they almost look the same. You can't really tell the difference. So they are sometimes called as tepals. Now, in the orchid family, there is a 3rd petal which is different. It is different from all the other ones. As you can see very clearly in this, you can see 1 petal which is different than the others. Also, they are pollinated by insects and birds, and their leaves are very minute and powder-like. Their seeds, rather. Orchids are also perennial herbs. Now, the next family that we're going to look at is the lily, or the Liliaceae. Okay. Now, again, as in the other family, they have linear leaves with parallel veins. And the unique thing about lilies is their flower parts are in multiples or in factors of 3. 3 petals, 3 sepals, again similar to the Orchidaceae. They have 3 petals and 3 sepals, which look identical in size and color, so they're called tepals. Okay, and some of these lilies will have an underground storage structure like a bulb. Now, if you know any examples of lilies or orchids, you can put them in the chat, and Natalie will read them out. Okay, some of the simple examples that we have for lilies are tulip and wild garlic. Okay, tulips, and we have a picture here of tulips and wild garlic. Now, the next one we're going to look at is the cactus, or Cactusaceae, which is the technical term. Now, cactus are very distinctive and unusual plants in which that they live in extremely difficult environments, typically extremely arid and hot environments like deserts and so on and so forth. Now, they have a range of features, both anatomical and physiological features that help them conserve water. Most cacti are succulent. By succulent, it means that they are fleshy. They have fleshy parts which are adapted to hold water. Okay? And these succulent structures contain chlorophyll that is necessary for life and growth. The leaves are spines. The cacti have lost their leaves, and the spines are more or less what are left of these leaves. Now, some examples of cactus are the saguaro, the barrel cactus, prickly pear, and rabbit ear. Here are some of the pictures that we have for them. On the left is the prickly pear in the left-hand corner, and next to that is the saguaro. And the barrel is down below. The barrel cactus is really beautiful, and they look exactly round like barrels. And the big picture on the right are the rabbit ears. And some of those cactus, if you look at carefully, look like a cactus with 2 ears on them. The next family is one of my favorite families, which is the rose family, or the Rosaceae. Okay. Now, the uniqueness of the rose family is that they have 5 sepals and 5 petals. And each flower has at least 10 stamens. The rose family has a hypanthium, which is a bowl-shaped part of the flower, which is basically the bottom of the sepals, petals, and stamens, which are fused together. Now, the Rosaceae is a unique family because it does not just have the rose, but it has the other plants which I like the most, such as blackberry, strawberry, raspberries, plums, apples, peaches, cherries, and pears. I was so surprised to know that they all belong to the same family. Now on the left, we have the roses, followed by the apple blossom, the pear blossom. We have a peach blossom down there, as well as a pear blossom. We also have a strawberry blossom in there. So I like this family because they're all edible and delicious. Now, another family that is called the Aster or the Asteraceae. Now, this family is very, very unique. It is also called the composite family. With the Orchid family and the Asteraceae family, you're basically looking at two of the largest families of flowers. They roughly have between both of them 25 to 30,000 different species of flowers. Okay, now these flowers are very dense. The flowers are very dense heads. So, and they consist of many flowers. They are both annuals and perennials. Plants in the Aster families have one or two kinds or both kinds of flowerets. The flower head, for example, the flower head like a sunflower is composed of flowers termed as a ligule and ray florets. Now, another thing about the Aster family is they have both annuals, perennials, and some of them are both shrubs, vines, and trees. So the Aster in Greek means star, because some of the families have a star-like or radial shape. It is one of the largest group families with the orchid family. Now, what flowers come under the Aster family? The Aster, daisies, sunflowers, chrysanthemums, dandelions, lettuce. Even lettuce comes under this group of, or this family of flowers. This family has many subfamilies, and it is extremely large and various types of flowers are there in them. In this picture, we have sunflowers, we have chrysanthemums, and we have a daisy to show you the difference between the many flowers that make up this family of flowers. Also, we have a New England Aster here. Now, when we look at the last family, which is the buttercup or the Ranunculaceae family, this is the buttercup family. They are mostly herbaceous plants with some woody climbers such as the clematis and some shrubs. The leaves are often more or less palmately compound, and the flowers have free stems arranged in a spiral, usually with free pistils. Flowers are most often grouped in terminal racemes, panicles, or semes. Now, some examples of the buttercup Ranunculaceae are buttercups, which we have gone through, marigolds, larkspurs, thimbleweeds, columbine, clematis, and hellebore. Now, here we have some pictures of the buttercup and the larkspur and the clematis, which is a climber. Now we're going to look at a brief life history of a flowering plant. Now, when we have a flower and pollination occurs when an insect brings pollen to the flower. Typically, these pollen are sticky or spiky, and they stick onto, say, the legs of a bee. And when the bee comes to drink honey or nectar from the flower, these pollen get transferred onto the stigma of the flower. So the stigma, and from there, the pollen goes down to the ovary, and there with the ovule, it fuses, and we have a fruit forming. And it is these seeds which, when the fruit matures and these seeds are dispersed, these seeds then go into the soil, germinate, and as they grow, from these seeds, they again form a plant, and the plant again gives flowers, and from there again, the life cycle of the plant goes on. Now, one of the things we're going to look at next are plants that are poisonous to touch or even poisonous plants. Now, we need to be careful when in nature that there are certain plants that we need to be very, very careful of. Okay, so Jimpy Jimpy. This is a plant that I came across as I was preparing for this honor. Now, the Jimpy Jimpy is not seen in Europe or in the UK or Ireland. This is a plant that is seen in Australia. And this plant looks so innocent, but it is from the stinging nettle family. And if you happen to by chance just touch a little bit of it, it will take you into tremendous pain. In fact, horses that have been stung by it have jumped off cliffs because the pain is so intense and so horrible. I watched a little video of an Australian man who touched it. He was explaining a little bit about the flower, and he just touched it, and he could not bear the pain. He just touched a little bit on his finger, but it was intense pain for him. And I was quite surprised to see him doing it and to see the reaction that he went through when he touched this flower. So you don't have to go looking for it. It's not available in the UK. It's mostly native to Australia. Now, the stinging nettle, I'm sure you're all familiar with. We see it all around, and when we touch it, it stings. The unique thing about the stinging nettle is you can eat it. If you cook it, it no longer stings. So that's something you can be aware about, that when it's cooked, you don't have it loses its sting. Poison ivy is another poisonous plant that if you touch, it can give you rashes. Now, the giant hogweed, this is something that is unique. It's an invasive species that has come into Ireland and the UK. They grow to up to 5 meters. And if the sap of that touches your skin and is then exposed to sunlight, you can get blisters, you can get very bad discoloration, and it can be there for quite a long time. I've seen some of the pictures and they are horrible as how it damages your skin and stuff like that. So these are things you want to be very careful about when dealing with. Now, Adam and Eve, this is a plant that you might see in the UK. Adam McClim, I think, is the technical term. I'm sure Natalie will help us out. And the picture on the right is hemlock, which is again a poisonous plant, or cow parsley. You have to be very careful if you see that. It looks like an edible plant, but you need to be very, very careful of hemlock. It is very, very poisonous. Now,
somebody, sorry, Brother Abraham, somebody else has mentioned belladonna as a poisonous plant.
Also is poisonous, yes. There are actually quite a few plants and flowers that are poisonous, poinsettia, and a lot of them are poisonous that we use for ornamental purposes. So please, please be careful. Don't eat anything that you're not sure of. Please check it. They can be quite bad. Wait, so, yes.
And on the chat, foxglove is mentioned as well. Yes. And we have a question from Jeremiah. He asked, can it kill right away? Like if you get poisoned from a flower, can the poison kill you straight away, or?
It depends. It depends. Now, for example, hemlock can kill you. I think it's not something that happens very quickly, but hemlock is pretty poisonous. Yes, it can be fatal. Please be careful. It looks like some edible plants from the carrot family. So please be careful. It grows by the waterside. Please be careful with hemlock. It can be fatal. Yes.
I just checked belladonna as well. That can induce, it can be quite toxic. It can damage your skin. It elevates your heartbeat. You're unable to sweat or pass any water. It can do hallucinations, spasms, convulsions, and eventually lead to coma. So they can produce some serious side effects, these plants.
Okay, our next part is we need to arrange flowers according to the colors of the rainbow. The colors of the rainbow, we need to do 6 colors. We have 7 colors, but we can do 6. If you follow the acronym WIBGEOR, violet, indigo, blue, yellow, red, yellow, orange, red, you can look at that. So I've done a simple one here with some of the colors as well as the colors of the plants or the flowers below. So red you can find in roses, tulips, cardinal, and columbine. Orange you can find in daylily, marigold, spotted touch-me-not, butterfly weed. Yellow you can find in goldenrod, daffodils, dandelions, and evening primrose. Green, blue, and violet you can find in bluebells, clematis, periwinkle. Blue you can find in hyacinth and hydrangea. You can also do indigo, which is a shade of blue. I have no problem with that. Green is the one I found hardest. You have maple and Solomon seal, but the one that is pictured there is a green zinnia that I found was the greenest one I could find in comparison to all the others. Now,
if you're following through your requirements list, you will notice that we are in the 6th requirement. So the 6th requirement says you just have to do any 3 of the following. So one was what we just went through, the rainbow colors. So you don't have to do all the 6, you just have to pick 3 and do what is possible for you. Well, you just quickly go through them, okay? So the next one that we're going to discuss now is submit fresh, pressed or dried flowers which have 5 petals, 4 petals, 3 petals, and no petals. So just going to go through each one. So some of the examples of 5 petal flowers. So if you look at the picture there, let's count. This is a strawberry flower. So we can see there, if you count the petals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it's an example of flower with 5 petals. This is a blackberry flower. Again, if you count, we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 petals there as well. This is the wrinkled rose flower. This also has 5 petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Another example is nightshade flower. So if you look at there, this is the right side has a close-up view. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are all examples of flowers with 5 petals. Now let's see some flowers with 4 petals. So common evening primrose is a flower which has 4 petals. So if you see there, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Cranberry flower, it's a little bit difficult to see the other side, but you can see if you look at the there, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that also has 4 petals. The sundrops is also having 4 petals, 1, 2, 3, 4. The Virginia meadow beauty flower that also has 1, 2, 3, 4 petals. So these are some of the examples of flowers with 4 petals. Now let's see some examples of flowers with 3 petals. So the orchid, as he already explained while explaining the orchidaceae, he said the orchids have 3 petals and 3 sepals, right? So this is the 3 petals there. So 1, 2, 3, 3 petals. The arrowhead flower also has 3 petals. The right side picture has a close-up view. So 1, 2, 3. So they are having 3 petals. The trillium, as the word signifies itself, shows that it has 3 petals. So there's different colors of trillium. So you can see 1, 2, 3. So each of them has 3 petals each. So these are some of the examples of 3 petals. Now, this is quite surprising to see a flower with no petal. You might wonder, how is that a flower? Yes, some flowers have no petals. Let's see. So the white calla lily is an example of a flower which has no petal at all. So you might wonder, what's that white part at all? The white part that you see there is actually not a petal. It's a petal-like substance called septate. It turns black as it goes on, and then it will start revealing the yellow color substance which actually holds the plant's flower. So here the petal does not bloom. It's actually held inside that yellow substance. So the white part you see here is only a petal-like substance. It's not a petal, okay? Now, hog peanut is another example of a flower which has no petal. Now, particular of this plant is that it produces two different types of flowers. So there is a flower with petal, but the hog peanut also produces flowers with no petals, okay? So this is a self-sterile flower that lacks petal. They are produced on the lower stolons along the grounds, and they mature into a single-seeded fleshy fruit, as you see about there. Now, the next example is a lamb's quarter flower. Now, this is a very small, greenish, densely granulated into small, thick granular clusters. You can see them along the main stem or branches. Now, they have 5 green sepals, but they don't have any petals, okay? So these are some of the examples of flowers which have no petals. Now, I do understand that you might have difficulty getting these flowers, but try and collect as many flowers and press them or save them with the petals that is available. But for the ones that you have difficulty getting to collect, especially with this lockdown and the pandemic issues going on now, maybe you might be able to collect the pictures and put them together along with your collection.
That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Now we are moving on to the next item, that is distinguish and name 2 out of the 5 wild or cultivated flower by their order while blindfolded. So as we're saying, we won't be doing that award now, but it's a very interesting game that you can do at home, or when your club restarts, you might be able to do this as a group. So you can collect loads of flowers and blindfold and start guessing the flowers by their order. So I think that will be a very fun, full game, which you can do when you can gather as a group, or you can do it as a family as well. So that is something for you to do at home. Now, we're moving to the next one. It is list the flowers that you have observed being visited for food by the following. So we know that flowers are visited by many different creatures for different reasons. They go for getting food, pollen, nectar, and different things. So we're going to see who are some of the listed main ones we're going to list, okay? So let's see. Some of the flowers that gets visited by the flowers. So flowers visit a lot of, birds visit a lot of flowers. Some of the common birds that visit are the hummingbirds, the kingfishers, etc. The main flowers that attract the birds are sunflowers, petunias, hibiscus, roses, lilies, hollyhock, and foxglove. So you can see here a picture of a hummingbird visiting a sunflower. The hummingbird is a very small bird, so it's very easy for it to go visit, but it goes in. You can see the petunia flower visited by a bird. Now the next one that we need to see is the flowers that attract bumblebees. So we know that bumblebees visit a lot of flowers. So some of the common flowers visited by the bumblebees are aster, sunflower, roses, dahlias, geranium, marigolds, and poppies. So you can here see a close-up picture of a bumblebee visiting a flower, aster flower. So bumblebee visiting a rose. Now let's see some of the flowers that attract honeybees. So we know it's the honey that will be attracting. So the flowers that produce a lot of honey. So we have here again asters, foxglove, zinnias, roses, hollyhock, cornflower, sunflower. These are the flowers that attract the honeybees. The next one we need to look at is the flowers that attract butterflies. Again, most of the flowers attract butterflies. And the color of the flower will attract all these insects more. So the sunflower, lavender, aster, roses, oregano. Actually, I could keep naming a lot, but most of the flowers attract butterflies. The last one that we need to look at in terms of the visitors is the moth. So what are the flowers that attract moth? And when we talk about moth, we know that moths usually are out in the night. So these flowers that attract the moths are also night flowers mostly, and they will be very strong scented flowers because, as you know, in the dark, it's the scent that will attract the moths. So some of the flowers that attract the moths are morning glory, jasmine, evening primrose, and the night scented stalk. So it's the strong scent that is sent by the flower that attracts the moths.
Now, one of the other activities that you have to do is watch a flower for at least 10 minutes in the sunshine and 10 minutes after dusk and report on the insect visitors. State the number and kind of visitors and the name of the flower. Now, when you download your worksheets, there will be a column, a table that you can add, you can note down all of these things. So that table and all is already provided with your worksheets. Now, when you're observing flowers, you need to be careful. Observe from a little bit of distance. Don't disturb the bees and the bumblebees when you're doing it. So be careful when you're doing it. We don't want you to get stung by the bees. Now, we're going to stop there for a second and we're going to go and look at the other.
So as they mentioned, we had left the first requirement until a later time. So we're now going to look into the first requirement, which is to identify 35 kinds of flowers and to identify them. So we can either take a picture or draw them, and you just have to identify. You don't need to write anything about it. Just have to be able to identify 35 flowers. We're just going to show you some flowers here. You don't have to stick with this. You can choose your own 35 flowers which you are familiar with or comfortable with, which is common in your locality or which you know of. So we will just go through over 35. We have quite a bit, around 40 flowers, which we will just show you. And alongside as we go, we might mention some importance of some flowers depending on the time that we have.
When you do this, when this video is uploaded with the presentation, we will also provide you with a link of flowers that are available in the UK, wildflowers that are available in the UK and Ireland, so that you will be able to identify some of those flowers that are specific to your local region. Okay.
We left this requirement to the end so that we can take our time in going through all the flowers where we can.
The first one is the Aster from the Asteraceae family, or daisy.
I'm sure you've all seen this flower, and children like making daisy flower, the smaller version of them. You can see in your garden, it grows as a weed and also as a grown flower. It's very common in our locality as well. It comes in different colors. Here you can see an African daisy, very bright colored.
Tortoise. Chamomile, again another famous flower.
Now, this flower is very useful has a medicinal value. You can use it for relieving hay fever, muscular spasm, if you have sleeping trouble like for insomnia or ulcers and things like that. Some people put it as a tea and drink it.
Begonia.
It's very common as well. You can see in the gardens, in hanging baskets and around the place. It's very common.
Bluebells. This is one of my favorite. Very, very pretty flower seen in pastures, normally in wooded area. Very, very beautiful flower. Carnations.
This is very common. You see in the flower shops. You can see in bouquets, and it's a very common flower found in the gardens as well.
Bladder campion.
Now, this is not very common, but it is a common flower found in Europe, and especially in Britain. Now, these are beneficial for the treatment. It has a medicinal value. They're good for treating ophthalmia. It's also used as an antidote in poisoning. It helps in constipation. So it's edible. It has a lot of vitamin K in it. It can help with relieving itching. So it's a very useful flower.
Now, when we say edible, please be careful. Don't go and eat anything without checking with an expert about what plant and what it is you're eating. So please be very, very careful before you try to eat any of these things.
Especially when we say medicine value, you know that, yes, medicines are edible, but you cannot take medicines unless it's prescribed, or you can only take it in certain quantities. So if a certain plant or flower has medicinal value, that also shows that you have to be careful the amount you take or for what you take, and etc. Okay.
Azaleas, again, a very beautiful flower. Clematis, it is a climber, a woody climber from the Columbine is another one that we have that you can look at and see if you can identify it in your locality. Crocuses, a very, very beautiful flower. It's rumored to be the flower that we refer to in the Bible as the Rose of Sharon. So very interesting flower too. Dahlias, another pretty flower.
Very common in our gardens. You can see in different colors and yeah, very big size, small size, very beautiful flower to have in your garden.
Forget-me-not. Forsythia. Geraniums.
Again, geranium is also commonly found in many gardens.
Hollyhock. Hydrangea, a flower that we see a lot around. It's a shrub for ornamental purposes, very, very popular in pink and blue and green and various colors. Hyacinth, one of my favorite flowers, very, very pretty and beautiful. Again, available. Lady slipper, it is an orchid, as we saw earlier, from the Orchidaceae family. Iris, lantana, it's a shrub with very, very pretty flowers and berries too. Lily from the Liliaceae family.
And lilies, as you know, has a very strong fragrance. And even if you have a bunch of these flowers in your house, your room can smell so nice. So it's one of the very strong scented flowers. Comes in different colors again.
Lupine. Marigold.
Very common, easy to grow.
Nasturtium.
Now, nasturtium, I just looked at the nasturtium, and this has, again, a lot of medicinal value. The both leaves and the petals are very nutritious. It is very good for helping with urinary tract infection, cough, bronchitis. It can be applied even directly on the skin for if you have muscular pain, for mild pains. Very rich in vitamin C. It's very commonly seen in some of the gardens around our locality.
Orchids.
Very common, very expensive. The flowers are there for their very economical value.
Pansy. Peony. Periwinkle.
Again, periwinkle also has many medicinal values. They help in treating diarrhea, help in treating sore throat or high blood pressure, toothache, and it's also a very primary agent in anti-cancer drugs.
Petunia. Poppy.
Poppy is also very common, very beautiful flowers. It's very easily grown in the gardens, but this is actually monitored by the international agencies because they can produce opiates and morphines, heroin and codeine from these flowers. And the poppy seeds are very rich in oil. It's also rich in protein and carbohydrate and calcium as well. The poppies are also used for producing dried latex and opium.
Primrose.
Primrose is also very useful, like it can help with treating eczema, hot flushes, for premenstrual syndromes, for blood pressure, and for heart health as well.
Rose.
No need to mention this. It's a very common flower in most gardens. People like to give us a gift. It's fragrance, it's used in perfumes, and there's so many other uses of them.
Star flower. Phlox. Sunflower.
Sunflower, again, you know the sunflower seeds are edible. There's no problem. You can eat away sunflower seeds unless you're allergic to it. Now the sunflower, the seeds, we can also make sunflower oil from them. The sunflower seeds are used in salads also, so it's very nutritious.
Sweet pea. Tansy. Dandelion.
Dandelion, it is very commonly found as a weed in our locality. People ignore it a lot, but have you realized that it's a very useful edible plant? You can make a drink out of it. You can boil it. If you don't want to eat it raw, you can eat it in the salads. You can pickle it. You can eat the leaves, the flowers of it. It helps with UTI, cancer, skin. It's a skin toner. It's used in a lot of tonics. And as I said already, you can use it as a salad or teas. It has a lot of antioxidants. It helps in balancing your blood sugar, cholesterol, and also helps with weight loss. So if you're thinking about weight loss, this is one flower to go at, which you don't have to pay, found easily in your backyard or around your gardens.
Chrysanthemum.
Very common, found in the gardens. You can see in the bouquets.
Tuft witch. Tulips. Daffodils. Lotus. There we go. That is the end of all the flowers, all of our requirements. You should be able to complete. Mostly you will have to do one or two things at home, but you should have the tools to complete it all.